basically, in a nutshell, we're asking for assistance, we're asking for ideas, and we're asking for participation from the town as a business community to make ourselves stronger. We're also approaching the MD, and I am going to be hopefully getting a hold of the surrounding area Chamber of Commerce members as well. This whole Peace Country, Economic Alliance, Lesser Slave Lake, there's that group of friends we need to get together so that we have the ability to grow and move forward with numbers. You can't do it with only one small community. So, is there questions that you guys would have for us to maybe get some sparks flying?
How many members do you have, Matt?
I believe it's between 65 and 70 members.
And how many people are coming to your meetings?
8 to 12.
Mayor Connors.
No, active, 8 to 12 active.
Yeah.
Actually, some of those numbers are the media.
Pardon?
Some of those numbers are the media. So you could actually say 5 to, 8 are active members.
Right now, the executive board consists of Tracy and I, because of the fact that we had to meld the board's tasks into 2 or 3 seats as a result of not enough people showing up at the AGM last year to be nominated and voted on. So right now it's a pretty large task for a couple of us to keep this on its feet. So we're really hoping that we can get some enthusiasm and some excitement back in and show our members the value that we could offer to them. So.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
I just have a question for all of you, I guess. What was the motivation to the invitation for us? We obviously came up in conversation somewhere and somebody wanted to talk to us. So.
I think part of it was from discussions of the Treaty 8 and the different functions that are going on in the town. And the amount of organizations that come to the town of High Prairie, asking for grants, asking for funding, and then the discussion turned, if I'm correct, that why aren't the people from Treaty 8 getting in touch with the Chamber of Commerce and going to the businesses and trying to spark that relationship? My comment was very similar to what you said, Matt, is that the Chamber's tired. It's small, it's got a small group. What are they, how are they supposed to do it? How can they do it? We did have some discussion earlier on having representation on the Chamber, but that was turned down from the town at the time, trying to be fiscally responsible and reduce the amount of organizations and committees that we sit on. But maybe that's something we need to look at changing.
Yeah. Okay.
One other suggestion that was brought up by a councillor was to have you guys, and I was curious whether other chambers do this, be responsible for giving sponsorships or donations to organizations if you were to have money that was earmarked from the town. Like we in the past have had money and we can give it, but we deal with it on a per meeting basis, and sometimes we don't have the background information to where is the best opportunity for our community, where should the dollars go.
Okay.
And we had a councillor that thought that possibly the chamber would be sort of that better source of where the business dollars should go when you're talking about sponsorships, and Treaty 8 was sort of the topic of conversation at that point in time.
So you'd be looking to discuss with us ideas during your budgetary discussions?
Or earmark, the suggestion was actually earmarking funds that, they would sit with the town potentially, but that you guys would make the decisions on, where people would come into your organizations.
Right.
And would also be a draw then for people to come and be part of the chamber or to come and talk to you guys.
My hesitation with that idea, just on a personal level from my business side of things, would be the limited participation right now of the chamber itself. We might come up against, if we were the ones deciding where the money would go, come up with some sort of conflict of interest.
Yeah. Or the idea of favoritism. Yeah,
because
when
we're not,
two
you
of us
know.
on the board, it's not like you could have a split vote. I mean, like, you can't, you
Yeah.
don't have a,
Yeah.
the time.
Potentially down the road, that sounds like a very exciting idea and concept, because you're drawing from our knowledge of the business community what we need and who would benefit from it is really what
Yeah,
you're looking for.
exactly, yeah.
I know Treaty 8 came to us. They came directly to us and to Tracy as well. They didn't approach the body of the chamber probably because they weren't sure who to contact or how to get to us. So that's our responsibility to advertise ourselves better. But when they did come to me, I know the benefit that I got from it, and I know all the other the businesses in town should understand the benefit that they would get from it. But I mean, when I got that call from you regarding that, I just flat out said, you know what, I'm not going to go to them and ask them for dollars and cents right now at this point in time after it's over with. But we got to do a better job of ourselves next year, making sure they understand what's going on, because of the influx in the population, and everybody's out of town. So you know, we stood to gain a lot. Unfortunately, I guess the chamber as a group didn't get on that quickly enough and advertise it to our members, and a lack of return from our members would kind of be falling on dead ears. But
Well, I hear you did a good job with Dwayne, and it sounds like he's quite content at this point in time.
I still haven't really had a good chat with him.
No?
No, he's a hard man to pin down. But I mean, I think he got the idea that we're willing to
Discipline,
to
yeah.
try. So
Yeah, no,
that's just one example of the taking care of this money that you think that you want to earmark, and then us help control it. It's a dangerous thing, as you guys know in your budgets. Your money is tight, and you want to make sure that it goes in the right place. So, yeah, it's building. We're like the Edmonton Oilers, only hopefully we'll win one day. So we just got to get some strength behind ourselves.
Yep. Councillor Wilson.
Do you guys have any suggestions that how we can help you guys?
I think the communication is key. We need to be here, and we would love it if you would be in ours. And open discussions it just festers. I mean, in a positive light, it would just grow. That's really what we need to do right now. And communicate with your taxpayers, the businesses. If I can get that from your office, to participate in the town, get the heart and soul of the town going again. Really. Our taxpayers are businesses. We get a lot of tax from business. I mean, it's a very small town. It's hard to do stuff. So,
Small town, but a great town.
yeah, I'm going in. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for inviting us here today.
Thank you very much for coming. We do
Okay.
appreciate it. And we'll see you around.
I'm sure I'll see one or two of you in a couple days.
Don't forget pictures. And next we have public delegations. Do we have anybody from the gallery for public delegations? Seeing none. And we are on to 3A of our agenda, minutes of the regular council meeting April 14th, 2015, page 5 of your agendas. And Mayor Cox.
I move to approve the minutes from the April 14th, 2015 regular council meeting as presented.
Discussions? Seeing none, all those in favor? And on to, with no business rising, no public hearings, no new business. 5A, which is on page 13 of the agenda, Finance 2014 audited financial statements. And please. I just assumed you were scooching up really
Yeah,
quick.
exactly.
We have a motion.
That council approve the 2014 audited consolidated financial statements.
Introduce
Please
yourself.
present.
So thank you for allowing us to come to council. My name is Kari Speaker Smith. I'm partner with Fletcher Mudrick and Company now for 21 years. And Stephanie Reeves is with me today, a CA who's been with the audit for 3 years and the audit senior this year. So we've presented a draft financial statement to the council. There were additional pages given just to note that some of the budget numbers have been updated to include both the rec board and the rec board, library and waste budget, which will be integrated in with the final town financial statements. So we'd like to go through just in general some of the changes from last year to this, and a little bit of an explanation for the financial statements. If there's any questions from council, you can stop us at any point in time. So if we can turn to the consolidated statement of financial position, I believe it's page 2. So overall, the town's financial position has continued to improve over the last couple of years as far as putting additional monies away in your reserves and your accumulated surplus. Overall, the changes in cash, receivables, and investments, there have not been any substantial changes from last year, other than in the current year you had some receivables for certain capital grants, MSI funding that's going to be received or has been already in 2015 in order to finish off some of your capital project in 14. And so there's a bit of an increase, about $300,000 in your receivables, primarily having to do with that. But all of that grant funding has been put in place and the reporting's been done up to date, so everything in that regard is good. On your financial liabilities, the payables and accrued liabilities, payables that increased during the year primarily had to do with your lift station that you're planning to finish in 2015. But overall, if you look at both cash, receivables, and payables that are going out in a net basis, the town's in the similar position to what it was last year. No other significant changes on the what we would call a balance sheet in a corporation. The long-term debt, essentially, you're just paying down existing debt that you have. The town took on no new debentures in 2014, so that continues to get paid down. And then in regards to your tangible capital assets, the majority of the increase in your assets were the road work that you did this year, which I understand is part of a long-term plan that is being done by the council, and some of your wastewater treatment and the skateboard park would have been the third component that was increased in this year for capital assets. And we'll talk a bit about the funding on the skateboard park as we go through. Inventory overall is just store supplies that essentially are kept for maintenance. Nothing substantial has changed in that regard. You've kept about the same that you've had in the past. And overall, that's basically the balance sheet. Any of the significant changes. If you turn to the next page, which is page 3, your consolidated statement of operations and accumulated surplus. So the town consolidates its financial statements with both the with 3 entities: the library, the recreation board, and the waste authority. The waste authority, the town has about a 35% portion that it consolidates. It takes half of the rec board because you have a cost sharing agreement with that, and half of the library because you have cost sharing with that as well. So the budgeted numbers and the actual numbers all pull in those components. There is a note in the financial statements that takes those components out of the town, just so you can see them in isolation. Overall, those 3 entities all showed pretty much an even no deficit or surplus. The rec board has a small surplus, and I believe the waste authority has a small surplus. But overall, the contribution to the bottom line of the town's consolidated statement is about $22,000. So the net amount, if you look at the town, the revenue and expenditures that are at the top of your statement, that would be basically your operating. That's your operating revenues and expenditures. And then the other items noted below are your capital funding. So overall, there's been about $2.9 million that have come into the town basically for funding and revenue that you've been putting now away into reserves. Your reserves have already been predetermined. You have a long-term capital plan on how you put those reserves away. So one of the things that often happens at this point in time is you have to have a motion to approve final reserve transfers and then a motion to approve your financial statements. In your case, because you have a long-term plan, you're already doing that on an ongoing basis, so that's great, that's good. It's a very good way to manage your funds throughout the year. Just to go a bit through revenues and expenses and some of the changes from last year to this, or maybe to explain some of the differences having to do with budget to actual. So for instance, your user fee budget looks quite a bit lower than actual, but then if you look at the very bottom of expenditures, gas distribution, it's just a component of gas revenues and the rates coming in to the gas expenditures going out. Net wise, it's quite similar. There's a bit of an increase in the gas costs, but overall it nets out to be about the similar amount. Overall, you'll see that your budget has stayed very close to what you have as actual revenues and expenditures. The only time you would see revenues that are higher, for instance, your licensing and permits, you had quite a few more permits sold this year, partly due to the hospital being built and all of the components that come with that. So that's a part that revenues were substantially more than what your budget was. In other revenue, those would be your inventory sales of your some of the land that you had in inventory. That revenue is showing in other, so just to clarify what's in there. Those were one of the things I was going to highlight on revenue. On expenditures overall, again, if you look to your budget and compare that to the actual expenditures, you've primarily stayed under what you had as budgeted expenditures. I believe the only area is in planning and development. You've had additional expenditures, but again, that's been a big part of your plans as far as what you're doing for roadways and some of the development around the hospital and the lift station. Some of those things that have been happening as well. Roads, fire, airport, water supply and distribution, wastewater, all of those things are staying almost, well, they're right in line with where your budget is at. Council expenditures are fairly under what you had budgeted. All of these budget items, you did include amortization, and so we kept that so that it's very comparable, where some municipalities have still not gone ahead with that. Recreation and culture, a part of that budget obviously is coming from the rec board as well, but again, you can see that expenses are well below what your budgeted numbers were. I believe that's all I needed to highlight on that page. Is there any questions? Okay. There's everything else, that's all these other pages are support on what we've just spoke about. There's notes that have some detail, and you've been provided those with information already. Overall, the town audit went very smoothly, and we just appreciate that you've given us the opportunity again this year to be your auditors. So thank you for that. The only other page that I would note is on page 10. Expenditures are not by function, they're there by object, by type of expense. So it's just another way of comparing expenses to your budget. And again, you'll see that it's Schedule 5. Most of those expenditures are showing under what you had budgeted.
No, we're one page out all the time.
Are we one page out? Oh, okay, because you're on the draft. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you're 11.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, sorry. So this breaks it down by your overall salaries for the town, your contracted services, materials, goods, and supplies. And if you look at contracted services and materials, compare those two budget items to the actual expenses net together, it's almost identical. Your grants to local boards and agencies, you had budgeted additional amounts, which I believe some of those things did not occur. I believe also the grants to local boards encompasses some of the money that you put into the state work as well. Yeah, and everything else was very comparable, so overall, I think financially sound.
Great, thank you. Any questions, any further? Councillor
I just have a question, and I had sent you probably before you met the explanation. The library, the person that had done the audit for the library was showing there was a $38,000 overpayment from the town to the library,
Right.
and so there's issues with how we're going to deal with that in terms of the library and the town. Is that in here somewhere?
Yes, so in the town's financial statements, it's showing that that amount is receivable from the library.
Okay.
It's still disclosing it that way on a cost-sharing arrangement basis, that if there's any excess that the library is carrying, has created a surplus, that technically 50% of that is still receivable back to the town.
Okay.
So it is showing in accounts receivable. There is a note in the financial statements for related parties that discloses all items that are between your entities. I think it's the second last. Yeah, it just is as a group, isn't it? Yeah, just on page, I guess it'd be page 21 in yours. It shows overall how it's been integrated, but it just nets it all together in financial assets. But it is as an accounts receivable in the town.
So in order to change that, we would have to draft a new policy that says any surplus is considered their money or something to that effect?
Correct. Their current agreement would either have to be, either the current agreement is revised, or each municipality agrees that this amount can be retained, and there'd be a separate motion to that, and then likely the recommendation, say from the library, would be, okay, this is what our intention is for these funds, and they've set basically aside a reserve within the, but that, the current cost-sharing arrangement that is outstanding doesn't.
Because when you met with Simone, that was discussed, right?
Yeah, that was
Yeah, okay.
discussed. And I think just to bring the issue to the forefront is from the town's perspective, it's an overpayment to the library. But the library, so we are recording it as a receivable, the money that we want to get back from
Right,
them.
yep.
The auditors are recording it as a capital surplus
A
kind of thing.
surplus,
Surplus
yeah.
kind of thing. But
Yeah.
for it to continue with the way it's been structured in their books, they will need an okay from us.
Right.
It's either we're getting the money from them or we are supporting the way they are recording it. So somewhere along the line, that has to be reconciled.
Okay.
And I guess we have the same situation with the rec board as well in a way.
Well, but the
But
rec
they're
board
two
does show it
different-
as a payable.
As a payable.
Yeah,
okay,
so if
75,000.
that is,
Okay.
if that
Two
is
different
fine,
things.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Mayor Cox.
I noticed on the notes to consolidated financial statements, my page 15, taxes and grants and taxes receivable,
Mhm.
that the current taxes are lower by 50,000 in 2014.
Yes. So from a collection point of view, the collections have improved from the previous year. So less are outstanding at December 31st than you would have had outstanding in the prior year.
And the tax arrears, though, have gone up.
Basically the same accounts with interest, the terms of interest that have been added. So whatever ones were in arrears in 13 are the similar ones that are still arrears in 14 with interest added. All based on the Municipal Government Act as to the interest that has to be charged on those accounts. And your tax policy.
And I also see on number 4, an allowance for doubtful accounts.
Mm-hmm. So those ones have been specifically brought, those are items, or they're well over, I believe you have a policy in regards to outstanding, if they're over 160 days, 180, those are items that have been allowed for, but not taken off the receivable list because they still are in the attempt to collect them. But the likelihood of collecting them is low.
So they've increased dramatically.
Yes. Now, that said, you've looked at them more specifically than what you have in the past. So versus saying, like, I believe, maybe not so much 13, but in 12, it was just a percentage of the balance, saying that there was a certain percentage. These are specific items that have been identified as doubtful in collection.
Any further discussion? Mayor Fox.
The accrued vacation payable,
Mm-hmm.
it's 110, it has increased over last year. That's a concern, I believe, and do we have a policy regarding?
How will this be different from the vacation and bank time payable that we just dealt with? Is that,
The bank time would be in your other payables, I believe. I believe this is just the vacation payable. So this vacation payable is partly due to some that you've had carry over for a few years that have still accumulated. But you also have more, you have additional employees, like a component of this is just that there's additional employees at
Oh,
December
okay. 31st
that have not taken holiday time.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
but
So this is the holiday time that's accumulated to be taken, earned in 2014, to be taken in 2015.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
so in, Mr. Chair, so in comparison to what we just discussed, there's more improvement in the other banking time, and this one is an accumulation of vacation time.
Yes.
I do have a question on capital payables. There was nothing in 2013, and there's 338,973 in 2014. What are capital payables, or what would we
So
have?
any lift station was at December 31st of 14. So any invoices that would have come in up to the end of December and not paid until January were set aside. And municipal affairs asks that anything that's capital related be separately identified from any of your operating payables.
Okay. I think that was all the questions I have.
That's all the questions we have.
David,
Any further? Seeing none, thank you once again.
Thank you. We appreciate
Did a
it
great
very
job.
much. We've left the financial statements and the financial information return for you to sign. May 1st is the deadline to municipal affairs for filing, so you've made the deadline. But we should be submitting to them the signed copies on approval. So I'll just leave those with you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, before you make the resolution, may I suggest that once the resolution is passed, that the mayor and I can sign this, so we can give it to them, so they can file it to municipal affairs.
I think that's a great idea. So, that being said, you want us to do that before?
No, you have to pass the
Yeah,
resolution.
and then we'll get that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
We need a motion.
Did we
have
do
one.
that?
We did, that's why we're discussing it. Right. All those in favor? Carried. Sure.
Do you need to make a motion for you to sign that? No? No.
No, it's allowed.
Okay.
do we need a motion?
I cannot hear you. Okay, 5-minute recess.
Because we have that,
That's what it is.
Oh!
Are you signing also?
Yes.
Or is another counselor?
It could be another councillor. Let me just make, I'm not signing. I'm signing a file. Kerry, which part, there's two councillors. Two councillors get to sign this, right?